Good afternoon and welcome to the Audit and Risk Committee of 1st of December 2025. There's been a couple of changes to the committee since we last met. I'd like to welcome Councillor Braun as Vice Convener. I'd like to welcome back Councillor Chan. Very welcome his input. And I'd also like to put on record my thanks to Councillor Colin Stewart for all the work he put into this committee since 2022. So can I ask that goes on the minutes? Great, thank you very much. Ms Malloy, are there any apologies?
Thank you, Convener. We have an apology from Councillor Harvey, and I just want to check, I think we have Councillor Grant Stewart joining us online. Can he confirm that he's in the meeting, please?
Present.
Thank you. All other members are present in the Chambers, Convener.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Good. Can I ask members if they're content to agree the committee meeting of 17th of September 2025? Thank you. Now move on to the outstanding business statement. Are there any questions on the statement? I don't see any questions. Can I ask if members are content that the outstanding business statement be noted and for the completed actions to be removed from the outstanding business statement? Okay, thank you. Now move on to item 5, the draft audited 24-25 annual accounts and draft 24-25 annual audit report. Could Mr. Walker, would you mind introducing the report?
Thank you, Convener, and good afternoon, councillors. Before I begin, I'd like to apologise to the committee for not keeping you up to date on when accounts would be issued last week. Whilst the reason for the delay was out with the control of council officers, I should have kept you all better informed, so I do apologise. I'd also like to thank Councillor Barrett for submitting comments last week, which allows us to make a few presentational changes to the version that I and the Chief Executive and the Leader of the Council will sign later this afternoon, so thank you. Today, the committee is asked to approve the 24-25 draft audited accounts for signing along with the letter of representation and note the contents of Audit Scotland's draft annual report to the members of Perth and North Council and the Controller of Audit for the year ended 31st March 2025. I'm pleased to advise that the committee that Audit Scotland have given the Council a clean bill of health. They have done this by issuing an unmodified or unqualified opinion on the Council's annual accounts, which is set out on pages 41 to 43 of your pack. The unaudited accounts were available for public inspection between the 30th of June and the 18th of July, and during this time, Audit Scotland received no objections. The audits of the 24-25 annual accounts took place between July and November. There are 6 significant findings or key audit matters that are set out in detail in Exhibit 2, which can be found from page 10 of the external audit report. The first finding related to required a restatement of old year figures in order to allow for a meaningful comparison. The second was related to the classification of our fixed assets. The third, a consequence of a change in one of our group accounts. The fourth related to a matching understatement of our debtors and creditors. The fifth related to our fixed asset register. And the sixth related to our remuneration report. 5 of these findings required adjustments to the unaudited accounts that you approved in June, and those are reflected in the version before you today. It's important to stress that none of these adjustments resulted in any change to the Council's cash reserves, and therefore the resources available to support delivery of the Council's strategic objectives. Audit Scotland also made 3 recommendations following on from their findings, which are set out on page 172 of your pack. The first 2 related to our fixed asset register, which we accept, and their response is also set out on page 172. In terms of the third finding, we acknowledge Audit Scotland's recommendation regarding the transparency and scrutiny of restructuring decisions within the Council. The matter highlighted in the report arose from a specific set of circumstances. As Audit Scotland confirm, it is within the Chief Executive's remit to make decisions on the structure of the Council, and this is set out in the approved scheme of delegation. We have shared examples with Audit Scotland where elected members were fully involved in the decision-making process. We remain committed to openness and accountability and will continue to present reports on senior management exits and restructuring wherever possible. Our approach will always align with the approved scheme of delegation, taking into account all relevant guidance available at the time and adapting it to the specifics of each situation. Members will also be aware that the scope of the audit is more than just the accuracy of the financial statements, and the audit report comments on the Council's financial management, financial sustainability and other wider audit work. In the key messages on page 143 of your pack, Audit Scotland confirmed that our budget setting and financial management operated effectively. Appropriate arrangements are in place for financial sustainability. Our arrangements around vision, leadership and governance are generally appropriate. We have effective and appropriate arrangements in place for securing best value. We have a clear vision to support transformation, and we have effective and appropriate arrangements for preparing and publishing statutory performance information. This year's audit has not been without its challenges, but we did get there. I would therefore like to take this opportunity to thank Rachel, Maggie and Pamela and the rest of the Audit Scotland team for their engagement and work on this year's audit. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank both my own team and colleagues from across the Council for their support in the preparation and audit of the Council's accounts, and in particular Alison Bryan, who's joined us in the chambers today, and James Salisbury. Convener, we are available to take questions, but I do expect the committee would like to hear from the auditors on their annual report. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brown and Mrs. Brown, would you like to introduce the report?
Thanks, Convener. There are a few matters that in my report that I'd like to draw to your attention as those charged with governance under auditing standards. I'm required to draw these things to your attention. So if you'll bear with me, I'll run through a few key points. Firstly, to confirm the status of the audit, which is substantially complete, and I would expect to sign the independent auditor's report later this afternoon after the accounts are approved and signed. As Mr. Walker says, we are proposing an unmodified audit opinion on your annual accounts. And while you might hope for and expect that each year, that positive assurance over your use of public funds is not to be underestimated. That's a really strong assurance to yourselves as council members and also to the wider public about Perth and Ross Council's use of public funds, stewardship of those public funds. So that's the most significant finding in my report is that unmodified audit opinion. The significant findings from our audit of the annual accounts are set out in Exhibit 2, and I'll touch on that in a minute. Mr. Walker's run through the key points there. And the annual audit report that you have in front of you is in draft. It will be issued in its final form after the accounts are signed. I do notice there's a few typos and formatting points which will be corrected, and the number of best value recommendations implemented has been updated from 3 to 5 on receipt of subsequent evidence while we were finalising papers. And on the timeliness of finalised papers, I apologise to members, they were slightly late because of my unavailability to sign off final changes. So I would hope that wouldn't occur in any future years. I'd highlight also that there are no uncorrected misstatements to report to you. If there was anything we'd identified as a misstatement above our reporting threshold, we're required to report that to those charged with governance. Misstatements identified through the audits have been corrected by management, so there's nothing to report there, which again is positive. I will ask members in approving the accounts if there's any matters of fraud or non-compliance with laws or regulations or any events that might affect the 24-25 annual accounts that has not already been brought to my attention. Probably not, but I will check at the end, and that you're content with the assumptions and methods used to support accounting estimates in the accounts. I report in my report that I am content with the accounting estimates that are made, but just to confirm that members are content with that. Moving on to the substance of the annual audit report, to confirm to you that I and my team remain fully independent of the council. That's an important aspect for external auditors, so we formally confirm that to you today. I would like to thank officers, particularly finance, who are our key contacts during the year's audit, but all officers and members that we've dealt with this year. That's helped to make the audit process go well from my perspective. So genuinely, thank you very much. We set out the scope of the public sector audit at paragraph 5. It's not just the audit of your annual accounts, it's the wider scope areas set out in the Code of Audit Practice. So you have a section on each of those, and that just below the scope, we also set out the respective responsibilities of myself as the appointed auditor and the council in terms of responsibilities for the annual accounts. For the annual audit, the audit of the annual accounts, we confirm in the next section of my report that there was no additional audit work requiring an additional audit fee. So your audit fee remains at £358,370 as reported in the annual audit plan earlier this year. I set out the materiality that I work to in terms of assessing any misstatements that we identify in the accounts, which is 15.1 million for the council's single entity accounts and 15.4 million for the group accounts. We have a reporting threshold of £500,000, so we tend not to report anything below that threshold. And as I say, there's no uncorrected misstatements above that threshold. The significant findings and key audit matters section, which is summarised in Exhibit 2, sets out both findings, misstatements identified in the accounts which have been corrected, or areas of higher risk that we focus audit resource on, or in the case of IFRS 16, if there's something new and significant that the council has had to include within its annual accounts. So we comment on the implementation of IFRS 16, which is accounting for leases, which is newly applied to local government this year. And just to say, we are content that with the council's approach to implementing it, the only issue that was encountered was as a result of something one of the group components did, and that's been appropriately corrected in the audited accounts. So that significant change has been appropriately managed. And you'll see some significant figures changing year on year in terms of that adjustment. We report, as Mr. Walker summarised, there are several findings around the fixed asset register, non-current assets. That's not unusual. You've seen similar in earlier years, and there's big numbers involved in non-current assets, so it's not unusual to see significant findings on non-current assets. So we've summarised those in Exhibit 2, and we make some recommendations for improvement, which are in Appendix 1 of my report. We also noted 2 areas in the remuneration report that were not appropriately disclosed, or not included in the initial version, the unaudited accounts, but they've been appropriately disclosed in line with the regulations in the audited accounts. Summarise the qualitative aspects of your accounting practices just under Exhibit 2, and conclude that I am satisfied with the basis of your accounting estimates with the disclosures that are made in the accounts. And we summarise also the group audit arrangements for Person Cross Council's group. So that's to set out the detail of what's in your group, the extent of work we've had to carry out, and where we need to rely on other auditors. And in terms of Perth and Ross, there's no detailed audit information required from component auditors. Exhibit 4 sets out essentially following up the risks we set out for this committee when we brought the annual audit plan earlier in the year. So that summarises the responses and the conclusions for the 2 significant risks of material misstatement, to confirm that we found no evidence of fraud caused by management override of control. As I said in presenting the plan, that's a presumed significant risk across all audits. That's not specific to the council. And also in terms of the risks around property, plant and equipment, as I say, non-current assets are an area of significant value and levels of estimation. So that's considered a risk area from an audit perspective. And we're concluding that the valuation of property, plant and equipment is not materially misstated. And we note that the council's made good progress in implementing prior year recommendations. So that's final positive finding from the audit of the annual accounts. In terms of the wider scope audit, The financial management section looks at the current year financial position and your arrangements for financial management and concluding that those are effective and appropriate. That then moves on to the financial sustainability section, which is about the longer term, about your medium term financial planning, how effective that is, and looks at budget setting for the future and the gap that has been identified by the Council's own medium term financial plan, which again is something we're seeing across all of local government. Everybody is facing that significant and increasing challenge, and we're concluding that Perth and Kinross's arrangements are effective and in the face of those significant financial challenges, the arrangements you have are appropriate. It doesn't underestimate the challenge, it doesn't fully address the gap that the council faces, but those are sound arrangements to be relying on to face those significant financial challenges. In terms of vision, leadership and governance, we've concluded that those arrangements are generally effective and appropriate. There's a couple of areas in which I have made a recommendation around increased expectations of councils following another council's exit packages arrangements. The Accounts Commission has written to all local government bodies to set out very clearly their expectation that decisions on senior exits and restructuring should be taken to members. And I have made a recommendation around that, relating that to current situation at Perth and Ross Council and the wider expectations around transparency and formal consideration by members of those to just maintain that transparency. A comment further in this section on the arrangements for the prevention of fraud and corruption, and concluded that those are appropriate. You'll be aware of recent convictions of people in the public sector for crimes of dishonesty, elected member in the west of Scotland and some senior officials in the NHS who were involved in procurement. These are I would say a significant warning that it undermines trust in the public sector. So when I'm talking about I have audited your arrangements for fraud and corruption, preventing fraud and corruption, this just highlights the importance of having those effective procedures in place. Because I comment on your stewardship of public funds, that wider perception is very important for the people of Perth and Kinross. And the last section on the wider scope before I move on to best value is around your use of resources to improve outcomes, which is about your performance management arrangements, your performance reporting arrangements. And again, I've concluded those are effective and appropriate. And the best value audit, the bulk of our best value audit work is the thematic work set by the Accounts Commission, which was on service transformation this year. And we brought a separate management report specifically on that best value thematic to, I think, this September audit committee. So that's summarised in the annual audit report. So it covers the full scope of our audit work. And we also comment on your arrangements to collect and publish statutory performance information. And again, I'm content with that. We have some information on the increase in performance indicators that are in the upper quartiles, which is a positive indication of performance. Paragraph 83 is where I make comment about the number of previous recommendations implemented, and that number changes from 3 to 5, as I said earlier. So that will be made in the final audit report. And Appendix 1 contains current year audit recommendations, a summary of the follow-up of prior year audit recommendations, and then following that, best value findings and recommendations and the position on those. And the last two appendices are the detail of audit adjustments that were made and the selection of 24-25 performance audits and national outputs that may be of interest to the Council. So thank you for your patience. That's run through all the key points I need to report to you, the committee, as those charged with governance, and I'm happy to take any questions on the audit report or the audit process in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brown. Before I ask members any questions, could I ask Mr. Glenn to make a statement about the inclusion of termination payments in for remuneration or
Thank you, convener. I think that we had agreed that the strategically for legal and governance, would make a statement, but I'm happy to accept the audit report in terms of what's been received. We've had significant conversations with colleagues from Audit Scotland. The report states very clearly that in one instance where a post left this organisation, that was done within the governance set out by the organisation and within my delegations. And I'm also delighted that in terms of the comments about fraud in public sector and public office, there is nothing that this organisation has done which is in any way contradicts any of those things. And just to say, we do get the opportunity to feed back to colleagues in Audit Scotland, and we'll take up that opportunity after this process through the normal channels, but also with a follow-up meeting with the Controller of Audit nationally. Thank you.
Lisa, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think there's nothing really more to add. I mean, we've complied with the requirements in terms of reporting. Audit Scotland are happy with that. There's been a lot of speculation around the figure itself. What I can say is that it primarily equates to the equivalent of payment in lieu of notice as part of a mutually agreed termination of employment. There's nothing sinister. There's nothing concerning around that. It's straightforward, and that's the information that we've disclosed. And happy we've worked with Audit Scotland to get to that position.
Okay. Do members have any other questions, either on the termination period or any other part of the audit process? Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Convener. Obviously, with a lot of public interest around this director leaving, I was wondering, would you, in hindsight, would you have done anything differently?
Chief Executive.
Thank you, Convener. I would do exactly what was done before in terms of complying with the scheme of delegation. I would absolutely take on board the further guidance that Audit Scotland has provided over a year after that individual left this organisation. And in terms of what I did, to be absolutely clear, we followed the Council's own HR position in terms of an informal conversation which led to a mutually agreed departure. And at this point in time, that's all I think I'm able to say on the matter. But yes, the process would be the same, reflecting the updated guidance a year hence.
Thanks for that.
Do members have any other questions? Councillor Braun.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for the technical support there. A question for Mr. Walker, I may. The external auditors picked up the point on the size of the organisation and the question of fraud. This is a very, very large organisation, as we know, very complex. Like many organisations, the power of control of funds is rests with certain people. So my question really is, generally, are you happy with the balance and checks that control the movement of funds, so no one, all the systems are robust enough that no one can override those balance and checks to commit any form of fraud with the funds, moving the funds out of the organisation? As I say, it's just a general question there, because we are in obviously a large organisation and the power and control rests with a small number. So you're happy with that?
So there's quite a lot of work goes into providing that assurance. Obviously, Mrs. Clark, through internal audit, does a lot of work in terms of our internal controls.
Ms Brown in terms of Audit Scotland, in terms of the interim report where they look into a lot of our systems work and our control work. And again, that's presented to Audit Committee usually in March or June. Or March or June. And again, that gives assurance. Another thing is that Audit Scotland specifically asked myself and again Mrs Clark if we're aware of anything that caused us concern. And we're as far as we believe, our controls are robust to protect as far as possible the council from fraud.
Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Convener. I'm just wondering how exit packages are calculated. Just wondering, just in general, how exit packages are calculated. Thank you.
It depends on what the exit package is for. I mean, if it's redundancy or voluntary severance, that's all set out and prescribed in terms of regulations and calculations. So that's done within a formulaic approach that's set out in statutory instruments.
Mr Walker.
Yeah, I would just add that every individual is different. It depends on length of service, depends on salary. So there's not a one size fits all in terms of the actual output, but in terms of the process, you know, we work internally with HR, we work with Tayside Pension Fund if it's appropriate, etc. And that's what all goes into towards the cost of an exit package.
Mr Glenn.
Yeah. Can I just maybe go back to Councillor Chan's earlier question, because I think I did omit something in terms of his ask about the process. To be absolutely clear, the process followed was within the delegation, but within that process, there was also updates provided to the appropriate elected members to advise them of what was going on at that time. So it wasn't that elected members were not aware of that. They were provided with verbal updates at the time. But again, it would be dependent on the nature of somebody's exit from the organisation. That was the appropriate thing to do, given the nature of this particular exit. But I think the other point that Mr Walker has made is that if you look at other exits from this organisation in the time that I've been here, where they have been pursued through another process, that has been reported to the appropriate committee, and that is again in line with the governance and in line with the nature of those departures and the remuneration which is associated with them.
I'd like to ask a question. Are we able to ask the exact details of how this sum was calculated?
We've given you the information that it's predominantly in line with the a notice period, etc. But as I said, given that this is being part of a mutually agreed termination, then beyond that, we wouldn't want to be straying into any other detail in terms of the individual's right to confidentiality and her rights under GDPR.
Okay, do members have any other questions? Okay, do members have any comments to make about? Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Convener. I'd just like to add my thanks to Rachel Brown and her team for all their work on the audit and for picking up and resolving with PKC the significant items that we've heard about that are set out in Exhibit 2. But many thanks to Scott and Alison and all of the finance team and officers right across the council for the work in preparation of the accounts in a particularly challenging year when there was the restatements and the new IFRS. And I know these would be huge tasks to tackle across the council. I'd like to thank Jackie Clark and her team for the reassurance from the internal audit team. And to all the officers who've been working on the audit process, responding to queries and managing the adjustments that were identified with the auditors, and to the finance teams across the council throughout the year who are keeping the records day in, day out, that are behind all this, because that's a never-ending task, and it means that when the accounts are prepared, audit queries can be addressed reasonably accurately and efficiently, I think. So thank you all for that.
Councillor Barrett, how often have I told you not to steal my thunder? Thank you very much for that comment. Do any other members have any comments? Well, I'll just finish off by agreeing with everything that Councillor Barrett has said. We have a wonderful finance team, but it's always a great relief to get the external auditor's opinion of our wonderful team. Like Councillor Barrett, I'd like to thank all the members from colleagues from Audit Scotland and from our own finance team for all the hard work all through the year. So thank you very much. Now, if there are no further comments, would members, are members content to approve the audited 2024-25 annual accounts? Agreed. Okay. And to authorise the leader of the council, the chief executive and the chief finance officer to sign the audited 24-25 annual accounts and the chief finance officer to sign the letter of representation. Great. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 6, internal audit follow-up. Mrs. Clark, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you, convener. This report presents the internal audit follow-up activity for the period to September 2025. 3 actions were due for completion by that date. 2 are verified as being completed, with the remaining action to be completed this month and included in the appendix. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Do members have any questions? No. Do members have any comments? Are members content to agree that the report can be noted? Right, thank you very much. We now move on to item 7, internal audit update. Mrs. Clark, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you, convener. Internal audit has continued to undertake work of a planned nature in line with the internal audit plans, which have been approved by this committee, alongside that of the Integration Joint Board. There is unplanned work which is taking place at the moment, may impact on the timing of completion of some of the planned work in year. However, we still believe that the audit plan is achievable within year. In addition to this work, I've been working with services regarding additional data sets for the National Fraud Initiative, which have been successfully uploaded, and we're waiting for the matches to come back from that now, so that we can then complete those investigations and then conclude the National Fraud Initiative exercise for this period. I'd like to draw the committee's attention to the appendix to this report following the withdrawal of the petty cash internal audit report. The appendix will be should be updated to say the petty cash report will be considered in March's meeting. Thank you.
Do members have any questions? Do members have any comments on the update? Are members content that the report can be noted? Thank you very much. We now move on to item 8, internal audit, multi-agency screening hub, MASH. Mrs. Clark, would you like to introduce this report?
Thank you, convener. This report is the final internal audit report from the review of the multi-agency screening hub, which was included within a planned internal audit work. The objective was to ensure the adequacy of the arrangements in place to support the effective work of the hub. Reasonable assurance can be placed on the controls in relation to the hub. And there are 7 actions were highlighted in the action plan, 5 of which are minor. So those two more important actions to be completed. There are also, I would draw your attention to a number of areas of good practice which are documented in 5.4 to 5.15, which highlights, how effective the arrangement is and how valuable it is going forward. I understand that Sharon Cooper, Service Manager, and Sheila Wilson, Improvement Officer, are online to answer any questions if the committee have any. Thank you.
Do members have any questions about this report? Councillor McPherson.
Here we go. Yeah, finally. Thank you, convener. Yeah, it's just two questions for my own understanding, really. On page 22, 4.3, it said there were no limitations identified that would impact the audit. However, we were not able to comment on the effectiveness of the arrangements of the other partner agencies. I'm just curious to know, is this normal in such situations, comparable with other similar events in councils across Scotland? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Yes, it is consistent. We have no jurisdiction to go into our partner agencies and ensure the effectiveness from their perspective. We can only really look at it from our own. Thank you.
Thank you. And my second question, if I can ask, it's just on 6.3 where it says data extracted from Mosaic. It does not appear to be checked for common sense before being transferred onto the register mashup list and distributed to the partners, resulting in errors in key information and misleading agencies. I'm just wondering, in the context of this document, what exactly does common sense mean? For me, it's a somewhat nebulous form, and it can mean different things to different people. So just in the context of the document, what does the common sense mean? Thank you.
That would really be where something is documented within a specific column that doesn't relate to that comment, that column. So if, for example, this is not an exact example from this particular audit, but if there was to be an indication of someone's marital status within the family, then it may refer to an address. So it's the common sense around what is within each of the individual fields that's being collected. So just some things were just out of kilter.
Okay, thank you. So that's an issue with the officer drawing up the report, is it, rather? Thank you.
Or indeed inputting into the system where things have just not been drawn down properly.
Do members have any other questions? Okay. Mrs. Clark, can I ask if you're content that all the actions you've recommended have been implemented?
Thank you for the question. As today is the 1st of December, I haven't asked for evidence that November dates have been achieved as yet. I'm not sure whether the colleagues on the call will be able to sort of provide any update to the specific actions.
Is there any Can I have that from
Hi.
colleagues?
Yes, my name's Sharon Cooper, Service Manager. So we have, we're in the process of improving some of the administration around the MASH process, which is heavily laden in terms of the bureaucratic processes when we're sharing information. So no, the tasks have not been completed, and we're still in the process of that.
Do you have a timescale for when that will be completed?
There are timescales linked in the plan, and I think the first one is by the end of December, and we're in that process, particularly for updating the MOU and improving administration around sharing information.
Right, thank you. Do members have any other questions? Do members have any comments? Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Convener. Just like to thank Mrs Clark and the team for this reassuring report and recommendations. As a member of the Children, Young People and Families Partnership, we receive reports on my screen's just gone wonky. We receive reports on many of the outcomes that are start off recorded and then worked through the MASH system, and I welcome very much the assistance that it's giving to PKC and our partners to provide the best joined up approach we can to help look after our children and young people. So thank you very much for your work on this.
And again, I can concur with my colleague, Councillor Barrett. I think this is a really important report, and it highlights the importance of the MASH, and it also highlights a few discrepancies that you'll be able to find in it. And it's the value of internal audit is finding these little discrepancies and getting them sorted. Things like the address list being up to date and the data being incorrect. All could easily make a difference when it comes to protecting vulnerable children. So thank you for that. Now, are members content that the report can be noted? Great, thank you very much. We'll now end this public session and ask committee to go into private session. Thank you.